Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. Now, this program today is a very special one because we are going to be talking to the people in the year 2064 when Wadsworth celebrates its 250th anniversary to tell them all about our 200th anniversary here in 2014. I'm Caesar Carino, your host, and we have a special person today who actually started this whole thing off with the first night on March 15th, 2064, and that's Bob Titus.
Thank you so much.
Bob, we're going to get to what you did in a little while, but in the meantime, how about telling us who Bob Titus is, where you came from, what you do, your family, and things like that?
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be able to share Wadsworth history with you a little bit.
Good.
My name is Bob Titus, and I have a wonderful wife, Katie, which is a second grade school teacher down at Franklin Elementary. And we have 3 children: Robert, Matt, and Kimberly.
And their ages, Bob?
And ages 34, 31, and 26.
So you have some grandchildren?
I have one grandchild, Sophia.
Sophia.
Yeah,
I have
Sophia.
a grandchild, Sophia, also.
Wonderful, yeah. We just adore Sophia and found out over the weekend that we're having another little girl.
Same family?
Same family, same
family.
son, same daughter-in-law.
Same daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
And where do they live?
They live in Columbus.
In Columbus. What about the other 2?
Kimberly, our daughter, which is 26, lives out in Phoenix. She works for Scottsdale, Arizona Medical Facility.
Which one?
One in Scottsdale.
I know, what's medical facility?
It's the largest one out there. I know that. It's in Scottsdale. I'm not really sure what the name of it is, but she's an event coordinator out there.
Oh, I see. The reason I asked that, my brother was in a hospital out there. He died in a hospital out there, as a matter of fact, many years ago. What about the third one?
Third one, his name is Robert, right after myself, and he works for a transit company in the Akron area. Not married.
A transit company?
A transit company. He does shipping, trucking, and receiving
really?
and booking loads all over the United States.
And what about, where do you work?
I work for a nonprofit called Open M, and we are really the only free medical facility in the Akron area that provides free health care for those in poverty. And I am the executive director of that Open M, which is called Community Works Connection, of which I work to help those that are in poverty find jobs.
Oh, how nice. Wonderful.
So very exciting, yeah.
That's great. And where did you originate?
I originated in Akron, graduated from Garfield High School.
Garfield?
Class of 79, Golden Rams, and Martin O. Chapman was our principal. And
I knew Martin very well.
Yeah, good man.
The Brown Bomber.
Yes, he was. We used to call him the Gentle Giant.
He was a gentle giant too, yes.
Yeah, he was a good man.
He and I worked together for quite some time.
Yeah, he was a very good man.
Yep.
So.
And then your wife is from Akron as well?
No, my wife is not. My wife is from West Bend, Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you pick her up way up there?
Well, she had moved here for a job and met her and fell in love and been married 23 years and just love it.
Now, typically we don't ask people their ages.
Okay.
But we do at this time for these programs that we are presenting now for the year 2064 to see whether there's a possibility you might be around in 2064.
Yeah, that would be really nice. As long as I'm healthy and well, I would like that. But I'm 54 years old.
So you'd be 104 at that time.
I would be 104, and
that's possible, though, you know.
That is very possible.
Yeah.
That would be pretty exciting.
As a matter of fact, just the other day, there was something in the paper about the fact that all the kids born now have the possibility to live to be 142, and those people who are in their 50s could live another 50, 60 years.
Wow.
So
as long as we're healthy,
right.
As long as we're healthy, that's good.
That'd be good. Now, I'm expecting to be here.
Okay, good.
I'm 84. And I'll be 134 at that time. I'm expecting to be here too, so.
Well, you haven't aged much over the last 20 years, so I could see you, Caesar, still being here.
I kind of doubt it, but I'm going to wish for that.
Hopefully your grandchildren will be.
Right, that's right. And this is one of the reasons why we talk about our grandchildren, because when they see this now, 50 years from now, they'll say, my grandfather just got done talking about me, and I was a little baby at the time.
That's right.
And now I'm 50 some odd years old. Well, actually, of all of the people, we're interviewing about 20 different sets of people for this, so that the people in 2064 will have a pretty good idea, not only of what we did, but all they have to do is put ditto marks behind what they see, and they won't have to do any work, because this has been just an absolutely wonderful occasion. The entire year has been just almost perfect throughout all of the occasions, or all the events. And you had the very, very hardest one for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, it was the first one. We had no idea who was going to be there, whether there was going to be one person there, or whether there were going to be 1,000 people there. And it turned out there were 7,000 people there that first night. You also did it on March 15th, when you did not know whether it was going to be a blizzard, a snowstorm, a hailstorm, a rainstorm, or perfect weather. So from that point on, how about telling us, from the time that you began doing this, what your thoughts were and how you got involved, and just anything you can think of, because this is where it all began.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, because we were invited by Pam Douglas. Pam Douglas said, hey, we're having a little get-together to talk about the Bicentennial, and we would like you and your wife to come down. So, of course, we lived down the street right there on the corner of Baird and Farr, and she lived on Farr. And she said, why don't you come on down and join us? So when we got there, there were probably about 10 or 12 people that showed up for the evening. As the night progressed, you know, I put my input in, and they kept talking to me back and forth, and we got ready to leave, and we were walking home, and my wife says, honey, you know you're in charge of this. And I'm like, wait a minute here. I am not in charge of this. This is not my event. I told him I would help. Well, the next day I got a phone call saying, congratulations for being the chairperson for the first night event.
This is the way that volunteerism works.
Yeah, it is.
Right, and it works very, very well.
So it was great, really.
When was that? What year was that?
Boy, that was back in 2013.
13?
13, it was like, I think our first was, I think we started like in March of 2013.
Easily then. Some of them started way back in 2012.
Right.
I mean,
it was over a year.
Yeah.
It was over a year in going. But, you know, as you know, Caesar, anytime you do an event, it is really all about the people that you surround yourself with.
Yep.
And the mayor, Mayor Lawball, and Pam Douglas, and Sharon Ray, and those people just surrounded me. And we came up with a core group of, I would say, probably 150 volunteers.
Just for that alone?
For that event alone, easily, we had 150.
Wow.
We had 150
people. It doesn't surprise me. What kinds of volunteers did you have to have?
Well, in fact, we had a gentleman that came forward to one of our meetings, and he said, you know, I don't know anything else I can do, but I know that there's going to be a lot of trash that night.
Well, you bet.
I'd like to be in charge of making sure that all the trash is picked up, and at the end of the night, I'd like to make sure the city is clean, he said.
Good for him.
So he took that over. So we also had a lot of other people that were in charge of volunteers that would go from facility to facility that would sell badges. People that would sell badges, because if you remember, the morning of, we were still deciding the day before if we were going to have it inside, the concert inside, or were we going to have it outside.
And we'll be talking about the concert in a few minutes, because that was part of the opening night.
It was. So we were deciding the day before still if we were going to have the big stage in the middle of the street, or if we were going to do it over at OJ. So that was
Now we'll have to identify OJ, because 50 years from now, OJ may not be there.
Right.
Tell us what OJ was, or is.
OJ is the performing arts facility that's connected with the middle school.
And the regular name for it is the OJ Work.
OJ Work.
Named after Owen J. Work, who was the principal of the schools from 1926 until about 1946.
Okay.
Something like that.
And I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, he was the principal of the school. big tall man, about 6'3" or 4", and a soft spoken person, but carried a big stick, a big stick. No one ever overpowered him. Big man, big man. Tell us about the volunteers now, because we do have the volunteer chairman whom we're going to interview, but she is the volunteer chairman for the entire thing. You
She was.
Yeah, but you have to have a volunteer chair just for the opening night, because it was such a huge, huge operation, that whole thing.
Absolutely we did.
And then you had people pick up trash, you had people selling
Buttons.
Buttons, that's
They were
right.
$5 for adults,
Right.
and kids 12 and under were free.
And that was for what reason? Why did we sell the buttons?
You know, it was first of all, it was a momentum that they could keep, which was a really nice badge, but it was also a way to sort of defray the cost of everything that we were doing, from the lights to the stage, to the entertainment trucks that we had there, the video games, the characters that were walking around the street, that were performing in the middle of the street, that were getting people excited. And then it was a lot of involvements from churches, local churches, such as the chapel down on State Road was quite involved. They manned all of our pits, our fire pits, so that night when it became very cold, they were making s'mores and passing out just information about the Bicentennial.
I must have missed those fire pits. I was in my General Elijah Wadsworth uniform.
I remember that.
With no coat, because there's no coat available with the uniform or the costume or whatever you want to call it. And it was cold. It was very cold, and I was looking for something warm anywhere I could find it. And if I would have known there were a fire pit, I would have hugged it, because it was cold. What are the kinds of things that they have there that would have required some volunteers?
You know, we had a lot of other things, such as people that would man the bouncy houses. We had bouncy houses, so we had to have, I think we had 3 or 4 bouncy houses that people were manning, making sure that there weren't too many kids in the, that were on the apparatus, because there was a weight limit. We had people over at the Strand that were...
Tell us where the Strand was and what it was.
I'm sorry?
Tell us what the Strand was.
The Strand used to be the old theater in town, but
Right.
then it's turned in now to a party center.
Party center, and also some minor offices.
There is some office space in there.
Right.
And what we had in there was, we had a gentleman that would tell stories, and we also had a magician in there, and so there were people in there that were passing out popcorn and water and.
Tell us geographically where the Strand was or is.
Okay, geographically the Strand was next to the Marathon Station.
What if that's not here?
Right across the street from the library.
Well, that may not be here either. So.
Okay, might not be here neither.
Let's take the center of town, and it's about 200 feet east of the center of town on the south side of the street.
Correct. Hopefully the gazebo will still be here.
Well, we hope that.
Absolutely.
Now this is my third. I've been here 84 years. This is the 3rd gazebo I've seen.
Oh, really?
Yes. So the gazebo may not be here at that time
we
either.
hope so.
But it's right opposite where the statue is of the boy with the leaky boot.
Boy with the leaky boot.
And I hope that'll be here.
We also.
The first one that we had was here for approximately, let's see, about 40 years, and then it disappeared, given to the war effort in World War II. And then we redid this one, and we also have a program on the boy with the leaky boot. But I hope it's going to be here for 2064, because it's a good statue, and it's also a memorial for all the war dead. And we've had unfortunately, a lot of war dead around here. Now, let's go from the volunteers, if we can, to tell us exactly what the mood was and how it started and who did what, and starting with the mayor, perhaps.
Yeah, in fact, the mayor, and in fact, I think yourself also, kicked the night off.
Well, I did. As a matter of fact, I had a very minor part in it. I had to say, let the festivities begin.
Let the festivities begin. But we just had a proclamation that just said that we were opening the Bicentennial year, and it was just a great celebration, a ribbon-cutting celebration, of which we had kids that came all the way down from the Methodist Church up the street, and put ribbons across the whole center of the downtown area, and we cut the ribbon and just started the party.
We started the party. Then I said that there were approximately 7,000 people. Where were they?
They were all over. In fact, the streets were blocked off.
Okay.
All the way, Broad was blocked off, and then of course 94 was blocked off all the way the center of town, all the way back to the middle school, and not the middle school, but to Central, and then all the way up past Trinity, it was blocked off.
Central is one of the schools, and we'll have to identify that one because all the other schools in Wadsworth that were here when we had our 200 or 150th are all gone.
Are all gone.
So in 50 years, the Central may not be here. So
Right.
Central is right in the center of town, south of the center of town, about one full city block, I would say, wouldn't you say?
Right.
And then Trinity is the Trinity Church, which is the United UCC, the United Church of Christ.
Church of Christ.
And it was approximately, what, a quarter of a mile north of the center, right? On the north of the center, on the east side of the road. Okay.
So we had everything blocked off downtown. There were food trucks that were all lined up from the UCC all the way back to the center of town. Food trucks such as Swenson's. We had a lady that was making hot dogs, a hot dog vendor, and then we had sausage vendors and people that were making donuts, and it was just such a festive. And then, of course, we had a DJ in the middle of town that was blaring music out.
Very, very loudly blaring.
Very, very
music.
loudly. He was blaring the music, and it was just pretty amazing. The festive activity, the people of Wadsworth turned out in droves that night.
That's right. And a DJ is a disc jockey.
Is a disc jockey, correct.
See, unfortunately, we have to say all of these things because the words may not be the same thing.
Absolutely.
And this will be 50 years from now, and so many things have happened. By the way, you forgot something on your introduction. What else do you do in Wadsworth besides these kinds of things?
Well, I am a City Council Ward 2 City Council person.
Right.
And have been doing that for a little over a year. And just in the process, as you know, the primary is coming up in May, and I'm going to be running also.
You're going to run again?
I am running again.
And you're unopposed?
I am opposed. I am opposed.
Oh, you're opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay, I didn't realize that. But
not for the general, but for the primary, I will be opposed.
For the primary, it goes, okay. Now, as we go forward with this, and I'm almost anticipating what I would like to hear you talk about, is the band at night, and we're going to have to describe that in real detail because, as current as I am, that is, I'm still living here at this time, I had not heard of this band, and I'm sure that maybe 50 years from now that no one will be hearing about it. So, would you tell us who it was and how you had to pick it out, what it cost, where you got it, whom you had, the whole thing?
Absolutely. In fact, we had a group called the Midlife Chryslers with Michael Stanley. And so the second part was the important thing to me because Michael Stanley, when I was growing up, was very popular in northeastern Ohio.
And why?
Because he was a rock and roller.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roller, and he played a mean guitar, and he had a great band, and he still has a great band. So what had happened, Caesar, we had contacted him originally to say, Michael Stanley, what would it cost for you to come to Wadsworth for our bicentennial? Because I had always thought, if you're going to kick it off, you got to kick it off right.
Big, right.
We got to go big. And when his promoter called me and told me how much it was going to cost to have Michael Stanley come to town by himself with his band, it was $20,000.
$20,000.
$20,000. He said, however, if you'll take this other band, which is called the Midlife Chryslers, Michael Stanley plays in that band. And it would only cost you $3,000.
And no one would know the difference.
And no one would know the difference other than he did not sing any of his songs. He wasn't permitted to sing any of his songs, but he sung some solos, and there were a lot of groupies, people that sort of flock and come to hear a certain performer. And we call them groupies in our day.
Right.
And Mark Shannon also. Mark Shannon has played for a lot. The guitar and also the other lead had played for a lot of really big bands that we knew in our time.
Now, where was Michael Stanley from?
Michael Stanley's from Cleveland.
Right, but you had to go to Cleveland to get him.
Yep, we did.
And the other person?
Was Shannon, Tim
Shannon, and he was from Cleveland as well?
And he's from Cleveland also.
So they came down here, and did the people stay or did they leave?
The people stayed.
They stayed under horrible, horrible cold weather.
When it started, the sun was out, and they were up there shivering a little bit playing. But as the night went on, it became bitter.
Bitterly cold.
Bitterly cold. And the people stayed and danced in the streets and jumped up and down and wanted his autograph. And it was at some point we had to even get security to block both ends of the stage because people wanted to run up on the stage and hug him.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So, in fact, Mike Kovac, which is our sitting auditor for Medina County, he was, I sort of put him in charge of the one side of the stage and said, don't let anybody get up on this stage. Because,
and Mike can do that.
And Mike can do that. He's a good man.
Well, besides that, he was a naval officer, and he's used to giving orders.
Yes. So it was pretty amazing. People flocked and were jumping up and down and just enjoying the evening. It was just amazing.
How late did it last? What time did you start it?
I think we started at, did we start at 5? I think we started at 5, and it was over at 9.
4 solid hours, and people stayed.
And people stayed.
They stayed. So it was worth the $3,000. Matter of fact, it probably would have been worth the $20,000.
It probably would have. The nice thing about it was what happened is we really intentionally invited a lot of people, such as the dancers, the local groups that do tap dancing, and also the ballet dancing. We really intentionally invited groups like that to come and also perform on the stage and to perform in the streets so that their parents and their friends would also come a part of it.
That was a wise move.
Right.
Get the kids to come, and you get the parents and grandparents and neighbors to come as well.
And the bands, the Wadsworth High School band was here playing the band, and it was just exciting.
Now, when we look at the crowd, not that we would know everybody, but did they look like essentially Wadsworth people, or did people come from outside of town too?
You know, I think it was majority of Wadsworth people came, but I think there were some people, the groupies, that knew Michael Stanley and the Midlife Chryslers, and they came for that. I would say probably maybe 100 or 200, but I think the majority of the people were from Wadsworth to celebrate the Bicentennial.
Now, what day of the week was this?
This was a Saturday night.
Saturday night. The stores are typically closed on Saturday night.
Correct.
But they did what?
They stayed open.
You used to have them stay
right.
open.
We wanted them to stay open so that we could get people downtown, because that was another one of our goals, was to really get downtown businesses, to give them a boost that night so that people would that have never been downtown to shop or to eat would come and hang out and maybe go into Three Roses, which is a local boutique.
Right.
To go into Thurber's Jewelers, which is a local jewelry store. And some of the antique businesses stayed open also.
I was trying to get out of the cold. I went to all the stores from all the way down from the south part of the square, and I could not get into any one of them. I finally forced myself into Bixler's, which is north of the square on the north side of the west side of the road, and almost to the end of the area that was blocked off. That was the first store that I could enter. That's how many people were in those stores. Now, they weren't there because they were trying to get warm, because they were dressed in heavy coats. All I had on was the uniform, and there was no coat for it, and I couldn't put a blanket around myself or anything else. So it was the first time that I wore the uniform. So every store was jam-packed to the point. So I went across the street then. I thought to myself, well, I'm sure that no one's going to go into the insurance office because they don't sell anything, and they're probably not going to be talking about insurance. That place was jam-packed. I couldn't even open the door.
Well, see, the reason that it was jam-packed is because what we did is we partnered with all of the local businesses downtown to bring something historical or something into their businesses, because we wanted people to walk in their doors. That was our focus, was to get people in the doors. They had all kinds of activities in the O'Neill group, which is right next to Thurber
That's the one. That's what I was talking about.
Right. We had activities going in there. At the State Farm office, we had places. The library was open. We had several different things going inside the library.
Now, this is what your committee planned, or what you planned, right?
Well, here's what we did: is we split it up into like 3 sections or 4 sections, and one of them was for kids' activities. And we had 2 young ladies that said, "Hey, we have kids. We think we know what kids would enjoy." So what we did is they brought in 3 video trucks, 3 gaming video trucks, and in 50 years. This is going to be really, but for our day, to bring in portable video gaming machines that kids can go in and interact and play Army or play racing with 6 other kids.
And they had lines waiting to get into those.
Their lines were 20, 30 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
So we had that. So what they did is all the activities for the kids were ran by 2 young ladies. And then the food was ran by, and I can't remember their names, so I do apologize, but Krista Jones then took care of all the food. She said, "I'll take care of all the food for you. I will call the vendors." I gave her all the contacts that I had. So she called around to get all the food vendors.
How many vendors do you think came?
You know, I think that night we had 7 or 8 food vendors.
And every single one had a line in front of them.
Yeah, in fact, at 6 o'clock, a couple of the vendors were already out of food. And I talked to Swenson's, which is a hamburger place. They have great hamburgers. And they had gone back to their West Akron store 3 times to get more beef and bread because they had ran out.
They had run out.
Yeah. So before the night was over at 8 o'clock, everybody had ran out of food except for Swenson's.
Of course, now it was an extraordinarily good move to do that. You had it we started about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
About 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you knew that they weren't going to go home and that they would be hungry, so we brought these trucks in, and everybody ate. I didn't eat because the uniform that I was wearing, or the costume that I was wearing, had this big sign on it: "You get it dirty, you get it wet,
you buy it.
You buy it."
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to buy anything, and I knew fully well that if I had anything at all, that would fall on me. So I didn't have anything to eat. What about the mood of the crowd? Now, we mentioned a little while ago that they were very happy and so forth, but this was supposed to be a historical kind of a thing, and Wadsworth has a very rich history. How did you, in your own mind, and I'm sure that you were thinking all of the time, because that's what you do first and foremost, but secondly, you were probably thinking to yourself, I got to make sure that everyone stays here tonight, and I have to make sure that they're happy and so forth. What kind of a feeling did you get from the crowd in terms of their acceptance of all of this?
Well, you know, first of all, for probably the first 3 or 4 days before the event, I didn't sleep at all. I was so nervous about looking at the weather forecast because it was supposed to be rainy, if you remember that morning.
Yes,
but then they said it would move out by like 11 o'clock. So, and it did.
It did move out.
It did move out. Beautiful clouds. The sun came out, but it was just so exciting. I mean, you could feel the atmosphere. You could feel the atmosphere from what we did is we also, to get the school kids involved. So we did the paintings. Did you see the paintings in all the stores? So each elementary school plus the Sacred Heart and the high school, they did a bicentennial painting, which was pretty amazing. And then what we did all year, my wife and I, even after that event, every 30 to 45 days, we would take it and take one out of Bixler's and take it to Richmond's.
And
move them in.
Bixler's is the electric store.
Is the electric store, sells TVs, VCRs, DVDs.
Right, and then right next door is the Ritzman's, but what is Ritzman's?
Ritzman's is a pharmacy.
Pharmacy.
And pharmacy and health nutrition store.
Right, that's right, exactly. So what you're saying then is what I thought that the word was going to come out of your mouth was, and it did, the energy was so powerful. Now, the energy then kept on building and building and building, and when it was time to go home, what did they do? They stayed.
They stayed.
They
They
stayed.
stayed. In fact, it was interesting that as the night went on, the crowds got bigger.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, the crowds got bigger. It seemed like at 4 o'clock or 4:30, you know, the crowds were a little bit, but by 5 o'clock, it just, I told my wife, I said, look at that. They're just coming out of the alleys.
Right.
Where are they parking? Because that was an issue for us, as we know in downtown Wadsworth. Parking is always an issue, and when you take the parking off the streets and they have to park on the back streets, it made it a little bit difficult, but it was so funny. You would just see hundreds of people like coming to the center of town, just like, and then of course the zombie march was the Michael Jackson zombie thing was pretty amazing, and that's when the crowd really just exploded.
Exploded, that's right. And as a matter of fact, in another segment of this series of programs that we're presenting, we're going to actually have the two people who worked with the zombie march.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and they're going to tell us exactly how that happened.
Oh, great.
Now, pursuant to the parking, I need to tell you something. I had to go home for a very short period of time, and I had to come back. When I went home, well, I got here early enough so I was able to park not too close, but I parked in the City Hall parking lot. And I know that parking lot pretty well. And I know where the one spot that no one ever takes, and I took it. I went back to the parking lot and got in the car, and I drove. I'll have to give it geographic now. I drove down south on Lyman Street, which is the first street that I could drive down because everything else closed off. I went east on Broad Street. And every single street, Highland, Humboldt, Fairlawn, had cars as far as you could see. Yeah. So that means that some of these people that were coming in later were coming in later because they had to walk a mile or more. If they parked on Crestwood, it's at least a good mile, way up on Crestwood, a mile to get down there. So that's how how the people got there and what they were doing. And then when you say that energy exploded,
it was.
It just exploded, I mean, tremendously.
Right. And at the Trinity Lutheran, at the Lutheran Church also, was very exciting because what we had is we had the steel band there. Did you get a chance over to the steel band? And the thing was, some of the gentlemen couldn't even find parking spots. So we had reserved so many spots out there, but of course people would sometimes pick up the cones and move the cones out of the way so they could park their car there because they wanted to park.
Right.
And so parking was challenging for us.
There's a story about the steel band. When I was at the university, I was dean of the evening cottage and summer sessions. And in the summertime, we had various workshops and so forth. I gave the first $1 to Dr. Larry Snyder to start the first steel band.
Oh, really?
Right. And he lives in Wadsworth now, but he has said time and again, Wadsworth will be the place where I want to take my steel band anytime that you want it. So I was really pleased that, that we had the steel band. And that was extremely popular.
It was very popular.
Everything was popular. And there's no way that you can get anywhere close to it.
Every venue was packed. In fact, at the Strand, and we talked about that a little bit ago, we had to limit the amount of people that would go in there.
Right, the fire chief wouldn't let you.
They wouldn't let us have any more people in there because the events were so packed. Yeah. For instance, on the bouncy houses, kids were waiting. They were waiting all the way down the hallway and out the door to get a chance to jump on the bouncy house for 10 or 15 minutes.
The Marathon Station, which is on the corner of Broad Street and South Lyman Street, has a parking lot there. The people began parking, and they couldn't find any more parking spaces, so they parked where the pumps were. And the poor guy that owns that place was just fit to be tied because he couldn't sell any gasoline, but he couldn't find the people who had parked their cars there. So that was a mess. Then the church parking lot, as I say, I was going north or east rather on Broad Street. Sacred Heart Church has 3 major parking lots. Every single solitary one was was filled, including all of the handicap parking, which means that, and people are very careful about parking in handicap parking because there's a $250 fine for doing so.
$250, absolutely.
And that's enforced very strictly, even whether it's private property or not. And that means that people who were handicapped were walking a good half mile to come down. So you had to be just absolutely ecstatic. Now, you didn't sleep 3 days ahead of time.
Yeah.
I bet you didn't sleep 3 days afterwards
You know,
either.
I did, in fact. The funny thing was, it was interesting. Bob Thurber, which owns the jewelry store, him and I were the last ones. I think the mayor had stayed until the very last minute, and we just sat down on the curb and just sat there and looked around. The streets were all still blocked off. They were cleaning up the stage at the end of the night, and it's just like, it was just, I was so overwhelmed by everybody that had volunteered their time, because, you know, I was just sort of the little leader there, but the volunteers were really made this happen.
Well, yeah, everyone, you know, a lot of hands and so forth, but those hands have to be directed.
They do.
and you directed them. Now, let's talk about the disc jockey a little bit.
Yeah.
A very good friend of mine, a wonderful, wonderful person. He has a sense of humor and a personality that just absolutely won't quit. I will admit that he makes sure that people can hear him.
Yeah.
Loud, very, very loud. But what type of music did he play? And that's going to, the answer that you're going to give there is going to resonate in something else that I want to say. So what kind of music did he play?
Well, he's playing a lot of rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Playing a lot of rock and roll, and it was very, very loud. And it was just upbeat music. It was just,
music.
It was upbeat. It was enthusiastic. You know, people were dancing in the street. It was just exciting.
The thing that surprised me was that people who were in the 50s and 60s were
Yep.
doing the dancing.
Yes, they were.
Because this was the dance with which they grew up.
Yes, we did. In fact, there were a lot of 50s and 60s music that he was playing.
Right. And the thing that I wanted to say here that I was going to resonate from what you just got done saying was the fact that when we first had one of the first meetings, I said, well, you know, one of the things we need to do is make sure that this is historically accurate. And I think that it would be very, very nice to have some of the music that was extant during the 20s and the early teens of 1900, and perhaps the gay 90s and so forth. I was voted down. They said, people will not stay to listen to that. And I said, well, certainly if they're, this comes from a person who is a relic rather than something that is today's modern boy. But I said to the committee, I said, well, but that's historic. And said people won't stay and listen to that.
But we did start out with a polka band.
Well,
do you remember that?
The polka band was fine.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go way, way, way back. you
Okay.
know. And everyone, to a person, I think that there probably were 75 people there, and they almost kicked me out of the room. We held the first meeting in the council chambers at the City Hall. They almost kicked me out of the room. And I thought to myself, so, well, they're going to find out that people wanted to hear those old things and they don't want to hear these new. My heavens, I could not have been more wrong. And what they really wanted to hear was exactly what you people had. Can we go another direction here? You say that you paid $3,000 for the band, which was a steal.
Yes,
a
it
real
was.
steal. What kind of budget, so that we know in 2064 what we're talking about? Now the dollars are not going to be the same, I suspect. You know,
Yeah.
I have no idea how much they're going to be inflated or deflated by that time. But in today's dollars, what kind of expenses did we have beyond that?
You know, I think our budget was $17,000.
$17,000.
I believe it was $17,000, and a lot of that went towards the gaming trucks. The gaming trucks, the video trucks, the most of the kids' activities was the big bulk of that. Also included in that was the lighting, because as you know, we lit the trees. So that was part of.
Now tell us what trees we lighted.
We lit all the really large trees downtown and put rope string lighting around them.
All white.
All white, because we wanted it to be, we have a celebration here. This is an accomplishment for Wadsworth.
It looked like Christmas almost.
It looked like Christmas, but with white lights.
White lights.
And so most of the what our expenses were was for the activities for the children.
Do you
And
have?
then
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then, of course, the $3,000. We paid $3,000 for the band, and then the stage was $2,000.
And that was a big stage.
Yeah.
That was a big stage.
Brought that in from Massillon, Ohio.
Right. It comes on a truck, doesn't it?
In fact, it is the truck.
It is the truck.
It is
Oh,
the truck.
okay. All
The
right.
sides, the sides flop down.
Oh, okay.
And
in other words, the stage, when they fold it up, it's a truck.
it's a truck.
Oh, and then I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
See, you said something a minute ago, and I wanted to hit on that one. Oh, how many lights? How many lights did you think that you had?
Wow. I could not even tell you, Caesar. I know we had thousands and thousands of lights downtown.
Each tree, I think that at one time I counted something like 23 trees.
Okay.
And they're big trees. I mean, they're not the biggest trees in the world, but they're big trees.
They're large trees for
They're
downtown.
large trees, right, for downtown. We are a tree city, incidentally, and hope that's in 2064 there'll still be a tree city.
Absolutely.
Which means that every year we get a commendation from the government saying that we are a tree city because we make sure that the trees are planted and taken care of and so forth. So downtown has some very, very beautiful trees. And by the time 2064, they'll probably either be cut down because they're too old, or they'll be so big that they won't be able to afford the lights. But if we had 23, I think that at one time I counted 23 trees that were filled, and I'll bet there were at least 1,000 or 2,000 lights on each tree.
At least.
Easily. So we're going to say between 25 and 30,000 lights. And by the time 2064 rolls around, they will have something that's even better than the LEDs that we have right now. Those were not LED lights that we had.
They were not.
No, no.
But we are. I know that we are replacing some of those lights to go around some of the buildings downtown now.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah, we are.
That's good.
With some of the, I'm sure the mayor will tell you a little bit about that. With some of the money that was left over from the budget, because all the events, most of the events, I should say, made a little bit of money because of the turnout was so great.
Oh, tremendous for it.
That we're able to put lights around the outsides of the building.
That'll be nice. Actually, we came in 25,000 under budget.
Wonderful.
We spent $100,000 for the whole thing, and we brought in $125,000.
Well, Caesar, I think that's because we promoted it well. People got so excited about each event that each event just grew to the Bicentennial Ball.
Right.
I mean, the ball didn't it sell out?
Oh yeah, sold out long before it was.
Absolutely.
Right away.
So I mean, it was just amazing that people really wanted to know about the heritage of Wadsworth. And to really celebrate that 200 years that we have.
Now, you took the words out of my mouth because I was going to ask you, how did we celebrate? How did we advertise for the first night?
Well, we advertised email, Facebook, which is an application on your computer that you can instant message.
Right.
Excuse me.
Instant message.
Flyers throughout the downtown, local magazines. Also put stuff in the Trading Post, which is a local newspaper, and then word of mouth. WCTV.
And Joanna Perino, who was
which is amazing.
She was the one who was doing the. She was in
Advertising
charge
for
of the
us.
advertising, and
She was.
since she is involved with as a matter of fact, she's been here for 23 years or more here at WCTV. She had that opportunity to put it on every single time she could, and she did.
And she may be here in 50 years.
Oh, easily, yes.
Joanne, easily.
Yeah. And hope that she is, and I hope that she can see what the kinds of things that she did for advertising. She's not a native of Wadsworth, but my heavens, she certainly does have her heart here in Wadsworth, right? Now, when we talk about advertising, then we talk about the budget for advertising. What would you say that, well, let's see, WCTV is free. But the only thing, well, maybe you better answer this.
Trading Post.
Trading Post was.
Yeah, we had some stuff in the Trading Post that I know that Joanne had done. And I think there were a couple other logo blurts, but most of it was, she would send it out to Facebook to somebody, and somebody would send it to their 200 friends, and then somebody else would send it to their 400 friends, and then those friends would say, oh, this looks fun for your children. You bring your kids, it's a fun family night. They'd send it out to their 300 friends, and before you knew it, 20,000, 30,000 people knew about this event, and 7,000 people showed up.
We have Dr. Joe Arpad, who was instrumental in starting the Wadsworth High School Alumni Association. Was able to get 25,000 students, the emails for 25,000 students all over the world. And that went out on his list, or whatever you call that. What's the computer word for the list?
Yeah, just their email list.
Yeah, email list. It went out, and we got responses from all over the world about, you know, the 200th anniversary here.
And I met some of those people that had came in town.
Oh, did you?
I was introduced that night. I know that the Douglases had, all of their kids came for that event, which had graduated. I know that some of the other, I know that the mayor's, some of the mayor's kids that had graduated from Wadsworth High School were in town. Her grandkids.
My kids came.
Your kids came, yeah.
From the East Coast, two of them from the East Coast, one's local, but two from the East Coast. And there is a small cadre of Wadsworth people living in New York, where my one son lives, and they all got together, and they didn't all come, but several of them came. So the advertising was done very, very well. When did you start the advertising for the first night?
Well, that would be something Joanne probably could answer better, but I know that for the 6 months before the event, I know Joanne was out there just talking about it.
6 months, at least 6 months.
At least 6 months. We were passing out flyers, we were handouts, we were talking to people, we were trying to get volunteers. I mean, anybody that we would talk to say, hey, can you volunteer for first night? Can you do this for us for first night?
And you had 150 volunteers.
Oh, at least or more.
100 or more,
Yeah,
probably,
more.
yeah. Now, why did we call it First Night?
First night is because it's our celebration of 200 years.
Right, but where did we get the word First Night? It's very popular now.
Yeah.
But where did it start in this area? Akron?
Akron, yeah.
Right.
Because they have a first night on New Year's Eve.
On New Year's Eve. And so we called ours First Night, but ours was the first night of the year-long celebration. Now, after we had the first night, the following day, yes, we had some